So you're perpetually single and you can't figure out why? Don't worry, I'm not here to roast you. I'm here to help you understand what's actually going on using real psychology and behavioral science. I'm going to break down the 7 traits that are scientifically proven to keep you in the friend zone forever. Let's dive in. Dr. Julie Norm at Wellesley College identified something called defensive pessimism, a strategy where people set low expectations to protect themselves from disappointment. In controlled studies, she found that defensive pessimists actually perform better when they're allowed to imagine worst-case scenarios. But here's the catch. This only works in achievement contexts, not social ones. If you're single, you probably use defensive pessimism in dating. Before you even approach a girl, you've already convinced yourself she'll reject you. You tell yourself, she's out of my league, or she probably has a boyfriend before you've even said hello. You think you're protecting yourself, but what you're actually doing is giving yourself an excuse to never try. The reality, you need to flip the script. Instead of imagining rejection, imagine neutral or positive outcomes, not fantasy outcomes where she falls madly in love with you on the spot, but realistic ones where you have a decent conversation and see where it goes. The caveat here is don't swing too far the other way and become delusionally confident. That's just cringe. Stay grounded but optimistic. Psychologist Barry Schwartz literally wrote the book on this. It's called The Paradox of Choice, and it explains why having too many options actually makes us miserable. In his research, Schwartz found that when people are presented with 24 varieties of jam versus 6 varieties, they're 10 times less likely to make a purchase. The same principle applies to dating, and if you're single, there's a good chance you're suffering from it. Here's what this looks like in real life. You're on dating apps swiping through hundreds of profiles, you meet girls at parties or through friends, but you never commit to pursuing anyone seriously because you're always wondering if someone better is around the corner. You're essentially shopping for a person like you're browsing Amazon, and that mentality is killing your chances. The fix: set clear standards for what you actually want. Then when you meet someone who checks those boxes, pursue them intentionally. Stop treating every interaction like an audition for a better option. But here's the warning: don't confuse this with settling. There's a difference between having realistic standards and just grabbing the first person who shows interest because you're desperate. Find that balance. Here's where things get real. Social psychologist Dr. Elliot Aronson studied what he called the gain-loss theory in relationships, and his findings are brutal for nice guys. In a series of experiments at the University of Texas, he discovered that people valued positive evaluations more when they came after initial negative or neutral ones. But here's what nobody tells you: there's a point of no return. If you're perpetually single, you probably start every interaction in friend mode. You're so afraid of being rejected romantically that you default to being the supportive buddy, thinking you'll eventually work your way up to something more. Spoiler alert, you won't. Once a woman has categorized you as a friend, especially if you've been in that zone for months, the cognitive dissonance required for her to see you differently is massive. So what do? Make your intentions clear early, not in a creepy or aggressive way, but through subtle escalation, light flirtation, genuine compliments about her specifically, not just "you're pretty," and creating moments that feel different from friendship. Ask her to do something that friends wouldn't typically do together. But please, for the love of God, don't be that guy who fake friends his way into a girl's life hoping she'll magically develop feelings. That's manipulative and it doesn't work. Psychologist Dr. Sue Johnson, who developed emotionally focused therapy, EFT, has spent decades studying attachment and connection in couples therapy sessions across multiple countries. Her research, backed by neuroscience studies using brain imaging, shows that humans are literally wired for emotional connection. It's not weakness, it's biology embedded in our nervous systems. The vagus nerve, which connects our brain to our heart and gut, evolved specifically to help us read emotional cues and form bonds with others. Yet if you're chronically single, there's a good chance you've convinced yourself that being emotionally self-sufficient, that never needing anyone, that being completely independent makes you attractive. You've bought into the myth that vulnerability equals weakness, and that real men don't have emotional needs. Let me be clear, there's a massive difference between being secure and being a brick wall. Women aren't attracted to emotional unavailability despite what some toxic dating coaches tell you, despite what you've seen in movies where the brooding, mysterious guy gets the girl. They're They're attracted to emotional stability, the ability to feel your emotions without being controlled by them, the capacity to be vulnerable without being needy. If you never open up, never show vulnerability, never let anyone see what's actually going on beneath the surface, and treat every interaction like a chess game where showing emotion means losing, where being the first person to care means you've lost power, you're not mysterious. You're exhausting to be around. You're a project that nobody wants to take on. Dr. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability at the University of Houston found something fascinating. Participants who reported the strongest, most fulfilling relationships weren't the ones who never got hurt or never showed weakness. They were the ones who had the courage to be imperfect, to show up authentically even when there were no guarantees, to invest emotionally even when the outcome was uncertain. These people understood that connection requires risk, that intimacy requires letting someone see the parts of you that aren't polished or perfect. Meanwhile, the participants who protected themselves by staying emotionally distant reported feeling isolated, disconnected, and perpetually misunderstood even when they were technically in relationships. Here's what emotional unavailability actually looks like in practice. Beyond the obvious stuff, you respond to "how was your day?" with "fine" every single time because you've decided that sharing your actual experience is somehow weak. You deflect every deep question with a joke or by turning it back on the other person. You ghost people the moment they start developing real feelings for you because suddenly things feel too serious or too much. You keep conversations superficial intentionally, discussing only safe topics like work or current events, never your dreams, your fears, your actual inner life. You pride yourself on being low maintenance and not needing anyone, while secretly wondering why nobody seems to really know you. You interpret a woman's desire for emotional intimacy as her being clingy or needy, when really she's just asking you to participate in the relationship on a human level. The move? Practice appropriate vulnerability in a graduated way that matches the developing intimacy of the relationship. Share things that matter to you, not your deepest childhood trauma on date one, but real thoughts, real feelings, real experiences. Ask deep questions that go beyond small talk. Questions like, what's something you believed as a kid that you don't believe anymore? Or what's a part of your life you wish you could share with more people? And actually listen to the answers, not listening while planning what you're going to say next, not listening to find an opening to make it about you, but really listening with genuine curiosity about who this person is. This doesn't mean trauma dumping on a first date, unloading your entire psychological history on someone who just met you, or crying about your ex-girlfriend before the appetizers arrive. It means being a real human who has feelings, who cares about things, who gets excited about stuff, who occasionally feels sad or frustrated or scared and isn't afraid to acknowledge any of it. Stanford psychologist Dr. Carol Dweck pioneered research on growth mindset over decades of studying achievement and personal development, showing that people who believe they can improve through effort are more successful than those with fixed mindsets who believe their abilities are set in stone. Her work revolutionized education, business, and psychology. But here's the dark side nobody talks about: the shadow aspect of growth mindset culture. If you're perpetually single, you might be stuck in an endless self-improvement loop that's actually preventing you from connecting with anyone. You've turned self-development into a prison instead of a path. You tell yourself, I'll start dating when I have a six-pack, or once I get the promotion, or after I finish this certification, or when I finally make six figures, or once I get my life together. You're basically waiting to become the perfect, final, complete version of yourself before you allow anyone to see the real, current, still developing you. You've created an ever-moving finish line that you'll never actually cross because there's always another goal, another milestone, another improvement to make. Meanwhile, months turn into years, and you're still alone, just with better abs, a fancier job title, more skills on your resume, and the same fundamental fear of rejection that you had before you started optimizing yourself. This pattern has a name in psychology: performative productivity. It's when you stay busy with self-improvement activities, not because you genuinely want to grow in those areas, but because staying busy gives you a legitimate sounding excuse to avoid the thing you're actually afraid of. It's why some perpetually single guys have read 47 books on communication, watched hundreds of hours of dating advice content, and can recite social dynamics theory like it's scripture, but they've never actually approached a woman at a coffee shop or asked a coworker out for drinks. The learning becomes the shield, the excuse, the reason why now isn't the right time. Here's the truth that the self-improvement industrial complex doesn't want you to know. Self-improvement is great, genuinely valuable, and worth pursuing, but it can't be a shield against rejection. You need to be willing to put yourself out there while you're still a work in progress, while you still have things you're figuring out, while you're still occasionally awkward or uncertain, because newsflash, everyone is a work in progress forever. There is no finish line where you become the completed version of yourself and then never have to grow or change again. The best relationships aren't between two perfect people who have it all figured out. They're between two imperfect people who choose each other anyway, who see each other's flaws and rough edges and decide, yeah, I'm in anyway. They're between people who grow together, not people who waited until they were done growing before allowing someone in. Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion at the University of Texas found that people who accepted themselves as works in progress actually had more successful relationships than people who waited to be ready. The self-compassionate group experienced less anxiety about being judged, more authentic connections, and better relationship satisfaction. Meanwhile, the perfectionist group stayed stuck in preparation mode, constantly feeling not quite ready, always finding another flaw to fix before they could allow themselves to be vulnerable with someone. Behavioral economist Dan Ariely conducted a fascinating study at MIT where he examined how scarcity affects decision-making across various contexts, from food choices to financial decisions. He found that when people believe resources are scarce, when they operate from a place of not enough, they make dramatically different choices than when they believe resources are abundant. They become more reactive, more desperate, more short-sighted. If you're chronically single, you probably operate from a place of romantic scarcity, believing that opportunities for connection are rare and precious and must be seized desperately, and it's showing up in ways you don't even realize. It's in your body language, your energy, the subtle desperation that underlies your interactions. This manifests in two opposite but equally destructive ways. Either you come on way too strong with the first girl who shows any interest, any sign of attraction, because you think opportunities are rare and you can't afford to let this one slip away. You text too much too soon, you make grand declarations prematurely, you start planning a future together before you even know her middle name. You treat every date like it might be your last chance at love. This comes across as desperate and off-putting, triggering every red flag in her nervous system that says, this person is not secure. Or on the flip side, you self-sabotage promising connections by pulling away, by creating distance the moment things start feeling real, because you don't believe someone could actually be interested in you. You assume there must be something wrong with her if she likes you, or you convince yourself she's going to leave eventually, so you might as well end it first. This becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you destroy the connection before it has a chance to develop, then use the failure as evidence that relationships don't work for you. A study at the University of Toronto by Dr. Jessica Cameron found something remarkable. People who believed dating opportunities were abundant, who operated from a mindset of there are many potential partners out there, were rated as more attractive by potential partners, even when researchers controlled for physical appearance, income, and social status. Confidence isn't just attractive, it's magnetic. It changes how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you interact. But fake confidence is transparent and cringe. The person who's trying to convince themselves they're abundant while secretly believing they're not gives off an entirely different energy than someone who genuinely believes they have options. Here's what scarcity mindset looks like in the wild. You see every woman as either the one or a waste of time, with no middle ground for simply getting to know someone. You stay in mediocre or even toxic relationships far too long because you're terrified you won't find anyone else. You tolerate disrespect, incompatibility, or lack of effort because some relationship feels better than no relationship. You overthink every text message, analyzing it for hidden meanings and worst case scenarios. And now for the most important trait, the one that might actually be the root of everything else. Dr. Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist at Rutgers University, has studied the neuroscience of love for over 40 years. Her research using fMRI scans shows that romantic love activates the same brain regions as cocaine, specifically the ventral tegmental area and the caudate nucleus, parts of the brain's reward system. It's literally an addiction response, releasing dopamine and creating the same craving patterns we see in substance dependency. But here's what she also found. Modern technology has fundamentally changed how we pursue relationships, creating what psychologists call vicarious engagement, the illusion of participation without actual involvement. If you're perpetually single, there's a solid chance you've replaced the pursuit of real connection with the consumption of content about connection. You watch dating advice videos like this one, you listen to podcasts about relationships, you read articles about what women want, you scroll through Reddit threads analyzing text message exchanges, but you never actually apply any of it. You've turned finding a partner into a Netflix documentary you're binge watching instead of a life you're actively living. It's the same mechanism that makes people feel like they've traveled the world after watching travel vlogs, or feel like they've learned a language after completing 3 Duolingo lessons. This is the trap. Consuming information feels productive. It gives you that little dopamine hit that makes your brain think you're making progress. It feels like you're working on the problem, like you're investing in yourself and your future relationships. But knowing what to do and actually doing it are completely different things. You can watch 10,000 hours of basketball tutorials, memorize every play, understand every strategy, but if you never pick up a ball, if you never feel the weight of it in your hands, or experience the sting of missing a shot, you're not gonna make the team. Knowledge without application is just trivia.